Let's just say it's not going to bode well for this game's review that after I saw that it was on my list, I totally forgot that it existed in the first place. I was actually worried I didn't play it at all because I remember there being 5 Mario vs. DK games, but apparently there was actually 6. 4 on the DS instead of the 3 that I thought. So yeah, let's just say that this game wasn't going to be the one to redefine the puzzle game genre on any level. I'm surprised that Nintendo keeps giving these games new subtitles, since they are so interchangeable with each other that with 6 of these games in this sub-series, it's very easy to lose track of what content was put into which game. While it sounds like Mayhem left zero impression on my mind at all, and it didn't, I'm not going to end up paddling it as bad as I did those horrendous DSi downloadable games that we talked about last time, because Mayhem did actually improve on what the series was doing. The story is presented better than the other previous games, where they incorporated sprite animation to tell the player what the premise is instead of just using embarrassing CG pictures of the 3 characters of the game. And the style is more supportive of the game due to cartoonish, over-the-top reactions of Donkey Kong and Mario. Yeah, the series is still using the 2 cutscene formula from all of the other previous ones, where there are no character arcs or plot turns, or really a plot line at all. Nothing changes throughout another 8 levels of game, so the entire title is just the puzzles and nothing else as per usual. Let's just say that I lowered the bar of my expectations after making it to game 4 of this series. The premise is that, again, Mario and Pauline are emceeing the opening of a theme park and are giving out toys for the occasion, this time mini Pauline toys. DK shows up again, he wants one, and the theme park sells out before he can get one, and therefore he kidnaps Pauline again in revenge for not getting the toy that he wanted. I know that the series is literally called Mario vs. Donkey Kong, but the entire series, Nintendo is making DK look like such a petty douchebag who resorts to violence anytime he doesn't get everything he wants from everybody around him. Pauline never does anything. Her entire point in this series has just been standing around waiting to be kidnapped. And at least give Peach some credit. She usually does a thing before she gets kidnapped by Bowser. At least she's not just standing around to look pretty. Okay, the plot of the game is relegated to like 2 minutes of the total game. Let's get into the puzzles, which is the only point for people to continue buying these games. 4 games in and they started actually making better puzzles. The screens are larger and more complicated, making the puzzles more interesting to complete due to a lot more moving parts and gimmicks that you have to contend with. The gimmicks for levels are better as they are actually adding more variables to all of the puzzles rather than just having 1 or 2 running through an entire world of levels and only being in that world. It's got a better combination of turn-based and real-time movement of the toys and the player changing the platforms in order to lead the toys to where they need to go to solve the puzzle. Overall, it's just a nice improvement since the game actually has some challenge, some depth, some actual interesting gimmicks and situations to work around while you're doing the puzzles. It's just got a good amount of puzzles and a bunch of different parts and tricks to learn to make sure all of your toys survive to make it to that door. Sometimes the number of things to keep in mind can get overwhelming, especially without a central mini-map to keep track of everything at once, but it's certainly more fun and more vibrant than the last couple of titles, where it was just more of the same without nothing else to back up a reason why a sequel was made. It had the same gimmicks, it had the same puzzles, it had the same toys, the same art style, it had the same everything, so why was those games made? Mayhem actually gets away a little bit from that by actually adding in a lot of moving parts, a lot of gimmicks, a lot of different art styles, backgrounds, and situations that the toys get into. The main gimmick of this game is that different character toys were added, than just the Mario toys. And when those toys are there, they have to be led to their own doors to complete the puzzle, rather than just having Mario go into one door. Around half the puzzles still have only Mario toys to deal with, so the multiple types of toys gimmick doesn't get boring over time, since they don't use it for every level in the game. The game also focuses on the player removing puzzle elements into a central inventory and tapping the screen to add the parts in inventory onto the world, making the player have to manage how many elements they use through the steps of their plan to finish the puzzle, while dealing with a limited amount of elements in order to keep an eye on all the toys walking around, and planning about how to keep all the toys away from death in real time, using whatever elements you have at your disposal. And it only takes a little bit of time spent in the later levels of the game to really show how frenetic this whole process can be. When you got these limited platforms that you can make maybe 2 or 3 total, and you have to use those to get all these toys all over the map to get to one place in order to finish everything up. It gets pretty freaking crazy at some points in the game, so I do appreciate that they're actually trying to get an emotional reaction out of having to deal with a constantly upscaling challenge. It actually makes it a bit different and a bit better than that last DSi game that I'm not even going to name because I hate it so much. It makes for an interesting mix of being able to plan things in advance and then having to deal with enemies and obstacles that move at their own pace in real time. Something that you just can't plan around for because they're moving of their own accord. You don't know where they're going to be at every single second. This game will just be throwing a lot of things to remember, a lot of things to work around at your puzzling brain in order to overcome all of these levels. You have to deal with all the platforms, all the different characters, the obstacles, the enemies, the projectiles, allied toys, and the world-specific gimmicks. Sometimes all at the same time. It gets pretty crazy. And at least the levels in this game do feel more unique and complex than the previous games, again, that just fall back on the typical stereotypical biomes like the jungle, the desert, the factory, the water level, and the sewer level, all those other things. Like, it's just everything we've seen before. While Mayhem does have a bit more creativity on its side to make do with. And while I was still actually pretty bored, since there was no story or new premise to get invested in, I have been saying, and will say at the end of this, that I was actually impressed that Nintendo tried harder with this game than the others to make something that is more satisfying and fun to actually play, because it's a game. Even the boss fights in this game were really improved due to the nature of the main gimmick of the toy and puzzle element management, making for something that is a lot closer to Twitch gameplay, and again, it's just more satisfying to deal with, because you can't plan everything in advance, and you have to be quick on the ball at the same time. Ultimately, I am going to say that this game is just a little noticeably better than the original game with how many complex puzzles and new elements that they added to the formula. So overall, Mini-Land Mayhem is a fine game. It's good and whatever, a decent enough time sink if you need to have something dumb to do on the weekend, or just have some spare time to kill. I would really only recommend an actual recommendation for this game to people who really like puzzle games and are the people who can let that lack of character and story completely slide in order to enjoy around 80 more puzzles on the DS. It's got some speed, it's got some drive to it that can give you some satisfaction by beating its complex puzzles, but at the end of the day, all you're really doing with this game is just solving puzzles. The ending of this game is actually the worst part. You just get a short as hell cutscene to show that Mario saved the day again, and then it just smash cuts to the credits so fast that I was laughing at how fast the developers wanted the game to simply end. It's like, oh, everyone just got to the ending, oh, we're done making the game, oh, we're just done, get out of here, here's the ending, go away, we're done with the game. Considering this is still Nintendo's attitude towards doing story of any kind for this series, I'm just wondering why they putting cutscenes in at all. Why not just have the puzzles stand alone and not bother with the incredibly petty DK bullcrap, in which he gets angry and not getting toys for Christmas for the 4th time in a row? I am still, 4 games in, not a fan of this series. But at the very least, Nintendo decided to start on the path of improvement, rather than just coasting on its niche audience to bring them a guaranteed paycheck and just make boring crap. This is the last of the series on the DS, but let's just say I'm not holding my breath for a massive increase in production value once this thing starts hitting the 3DS. I'll finish up today with a final scoreboard. And I'll wish you all out there a victory for gamers for coming with me on another journey of Mario and his theme parks. I hope you all have a good night, everybody.